Let's talk about the Eagles 55, the Commanders 23. Not just a win, Hugh Douglas. Not just a victory to put the Eagles back in the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years. The fourth time now since 2004. But Hugh Douglas, yesterday was a dominant performance. They left their best for last. And I remember we were discussing last week how many points they needed to win the game.
Yeah.
And I think the number 24 came up. Which
well, I said it was, 24? I said something like 27, 24, something like that.
Technically, they needed 24. Well, they poured on like 30-something more points and got to 55
They
to
put
23.
55 on them.
What an incredible, dominant performance by everyone. Saquon, the passing game, I thought that was Jalen Hurts' best game of the season by a mile. I thought it was so much fun watching Hurts yesterday. That was the way he played for a lot 2 years ago. He was spectacular yesterday in every aspect. Hugh, they ran for 7 touchdowns. They took the ball away 4 times. They had the Commanders, and they just smacked them around for 3 hours. Hugh, the Eagles are going back to the Super Bowl.
Yes, they are. I had them for 3 turnovers. I didn't know it was going to be 4. And it played out kind of the way that I thought it did. The Commodores tried to do what they did in the last game. The running game didn't pay dividends for them at all. So basically, they tried to throw their way back into the game. And like I told you, every time you throw the ball, if you're throwing the ball at that clip, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad. And you saw a lot of drop balls out there yesterday. You saw him connect on a lot. I mean, he looks very, very poised. But the turnovers is what was the deciding factor for him. And I heard a lot of Commodores fans talking about, the reffing and all that stuff. Man, listen, we put 55 points on y'all, dog. I mean, and that I know that's something that for a lot of people is a hard pill to swallow. Y'all got a good football team. You're a couple players away. But I looked at this game yesterday. The rivalry between these two teams is alive and well. And looks like they have a young, up-and-coming quarterback, but it's our time. This is our time.
Well, it is, and the Eagles are the better team. There's no question. As you watched 3 hours of football yesterday, the Eagles were clearly the better roster. Daniels is a tremendous young quarterback, and he's going to be good for a long time. We got to deal with that. But yesterday, he didn't have the team, and we did. Our quarterback played his butt off yesterday. How about the tone setter, Hugh, from Saquon Barkley? So they go down the field, right? They have that long 18-play drive. Half the first quarter is gone. I thought Dan Quinn made a mistake not going for another 4th down and try to get a touchdown, but whatever. Commanders up 3-0. Hugh, the Eagles get the kick return there from Shipley to get it to about the 40. And then, boom! Saquon Barkley, 60 yards. That play right there, it kind of like calmed down. Because I had some nerves, like, they held the ball the whole first quarter. They went right down the field. They converted a bunch of third. Like, it was kind of like what we talked about the Commanders, the way they've been playing. And then, immediately, Hugh, Saquon Barkley, bam, touchdown.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? I was when that happened, I was sitting there watching the game with Brian Westbrook, and he started talking about how special Saquon was.
He really is.
And he started talking about how we had other good running backs, but this guy's different. And it's just I always find it humbling and fascinating to be able to watch the game with some of my teammates that play different positions, that watch the game from a different perspective. Because when he started talking about Saquon and he was talking about how good he is and some of the things that he brought to the table, it really made you appreciate what it is to have a running back of that caliber on your team. Because like he said, we've had some good running backs in the past. Miles Sanders was a good running back. DeAndre Swift was a good running back.
Sure.
This guy's different.
Well, and the combination of him and this offensive line is one of the coolest things in sports. I mean, it really is, because sometimes things go together so perfectly. I mean, you could think back in the NBA, 10 years ago now, say 8 years ago, when Kevin Durant seamlessly fit into already great, I mean, they didn't need him, but already great Warriors team. It was like, well, this is perfect basketball. No one could stop this. And that's the Eagles' running game. It's perfect football with the blocking schemes, with Jalen's running ability, and then you throw a special football player in Saquon Barkley. And 215-592-9494. The defense stood up and did its thing. Jalen Hurts played his best game of the season. I was so impressed with his play yesterday. We'll talk a lot about him because he saved his best for last yesterday. He was awesome. Saquon Barkley, they had better coaching yesterday. The Vic Fangio effect is so real and it's so amazing. Sirianni was on point yesterday. I loved how aggressive he was at big moments. 215-592-9494. Let's celebrate this. The Eagles are going back to the Super Bowl. All right, lot to talk about here. Let's hear from some of these guys, the central figures in this thing. Let's start with the owner. So podium, I love championship podium celebrations and trophies and all that. So I'm watching yesterday, and I loved this from Jeffrey Lurie because it was so real and it's so true. Here's Lurie yesterday on Fox with Terry Bradshaw as they accept the George Halas Trophy.
How unexpected is this for this team that you own to go to the Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans?
Well, it's kind of expected, I think.
Oh, okay, good.
You know
expected.
what? Yeah. I mean, the most unselfish, humble group of players, coaches led by Nick, Howie and his staff. I mean, the best fans in the world. It's a pretty strong cocktail. I like that cocktail.
Congratulations. See you in New Orleans.
Great to be back, and we're there to win it.
Hugh, it was so spot on by Lurie because it is expected now. Like, you never expect, how many? They're 17-3 now and in the Super Bowl. That's not like expected every year, but Hugh, this is. Like, this isn't a surprise. Right? I remember before the season started, it took me about a month and a half to figure out how good they were. Other people were on this since the spring. But Hugh, remember we did our predictions for the season?
Yeah.
We had a lot of callers to this radio station saying 14-3, 15-2, Super Bowl. This is expected. Now, Lurie has built a team. They've gone to 4 Super Bowls since you were there in 04, 4 starting in 04. They've been to 8 title games in the last 24 years. This is expected.
Yeah, every year. So that's why I didn't understand what Terry Bradshaw was trying to say.
I don't think Jeff Lurie understood
because
it either. Yeah,
it's one of those things, the standard, when you talk about going into this season, you talk about the talent that we've amassed. You talk about the fact that Howie has done something that no other GM has done. And that's to sign 2 big-time receivers and have 2 big-time receivers on your roster that you're paying like $20-something million to. Like, that's unheard of. That was unheard of until Howie did it. Then go out and get Saquon Barkley, who I heard the other day, which I thought was kind of ironic. Other teams were interested in him that had more money, and he decided to come here. I mean, smart move on his part because he's been the difference maker with this team. Again, we were talking about it yesterday, man. And, like I said, talking to some of my old teammates, Brian Westbrook and Trey and those guys, and the question was brought up, what would this team be if Saquon Barkley wasn't here? And I think the consensus was we wouldn't be sitting in the NFC Championship game.
Nope.
That's a fact. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the reality of where we are because we don't know what Jalen would have been without that running game and had the time to come to round into form or anything like that. We don't know where we would be. And that was the reality of what we saw yesterday. I think that was on the second touchdown that he ran in, and his ability to keep drives alive and things of that nature. So yeah, it's one of those things. He brought a lot to the table this year, man. He really, really did.
Well, he's one of the greatest players to ever wear this uniform. I mean, just talent-wise, he is. He's a special football player. Let's hear from Saquon yesterday. Eye on the prize to get one more down in New Orleans.
It's amazing. We're here, Super Bowl, but the goal wasn't just getting there. The goal is to win, and we're going to celebrate, enjoy this, and get right back to work.
Well, that's it, because now, listen, as Lurie said, this is not unexpected. This is where they expect to be, and now the goal is to finish against the Kansas City Chiefs. They get Andy, they get Mahomes. That's the matchup I wanted. 215-592-9494. Let's hear Jalen Hurts yesterday. He loves talking about the standard. Well, he set the standard yesterday. He played amazing.
After you beat the Bengals earlier this year, you asked about Joe Burrow, and you said there's a standard too, meaning you have a standard too. We kind of left it at that. What is the Jalen Hurts standard?
The standard is to win. That's my standard.
What is that?
Well, he wins a lot of football games. There's no doubt about that. He's in his second Super Bowl in the last years. Let's react. Let's celebrate. 215-592-9494. All right, Hugh, who are you giving the most credit to for the blowout yesterday? You got Jalen, you got Saquon, you got Vic Fangio's defense.
Man, that's a tough one because it's a tough one. I would say my gut, my first reaction is to give Saquon his props, but Jalen stepped up to the plate, man. Like, we were all concerned. It is funny, and I'm being petty because we're going to New Orleans. There were a lot of people last week. I haven't seen the box score, but there were a lot of people last week that talked about how Jalen had to be the catalyst and had to run a lot for us to win this game. And for me, when I think about this game, Joe, and I think about how it played out, it was more of his arm.
It was, and he did rush for 3
No,
touchdowns.
he did rush, but it was more of his arm. What I remember from this game,
his arm
was more of his arm.
I thought it was his best game throw in the entire year.
He threw for what, 246 yards?
Yeah, and that's why when you say that, it's not about yards, because I think he had more against the Steelers, right? It was almost 300.
Yeah,
he was on point yesterday.
He was efficient,
accurate. I thought he made quick decisions, and I thought his ability yesterday, Hugh, to get away from sacks was, and I didn't know this was coming because the knee issue, right?
Yeah.
But there were like 3 or 4 times he ran around back there.
For 16. He had 16 yards rushing.
Yeah, but his legs avoided sacks because they had him a few times. Like the one where he threw to Devontae in the end zone, it was a pass interference.
Yeah.
He got away from almost a sure sack.
Yeah, I got to give Jalen his props, man. And it's another thing. I remember, and I'm not going to say any names because it was a private conversation, and we were just over there chopping it up. But a lot of people that were here covering the game before the game started. Jalen looks a little limpy. He looks a little gimpy. He don't look good. Don't look like that was what people were telling me.
Yeah.
That were actually on the field that had a chance to see. So now I'm like, man, okay. He didn't look that way yesterday.
He looked great.
He looked. And I like people talking about how he looked at warm-ups and how he had the brace on. I think he took all that stuff off.
He did. So they did it on Fox. They showed it. He was pretty bulky, and then they did the after shot. And
surprise!
Either he switched to like a thin, like elastic kind of brace, or he just, I don't know, maybe he didn't wear it.
And you know what's
funny? It was different.
I think because he's in that age demographic where everybody wants to, and he's Jordan Brand. Everybody wants that Jordan flu game, man. Everybody wants that Jordan flu game. I think that was one of Jordan's flu games.
He was remarkable. I loved the way he played yesterday. 215-592-9494. I give him the biggest part of the puzzle yesterday. I thought he was the biggest. And I felt this last week. Like they beat almost everyone anyway, but he's the difference between games like that and tight games. When he plays well, they're the best team by far in the NFL.